in the healing arts for more than 30 years. He began as a registered nurse specializing in hemodialysis, but he was constantly seeking out other methods of healing besides medications and invasive therapies. During his search, he was led to the heart, built his first harp in 1998, and soon began to take it in to play for his patients during their 3-hour treatments. The physiological effects he noted led to him researching the effects of frequencies. Since then, he has built 31 harps, which he says helped give him a better understanding of the instrument and its unique sound qualities. Since his early discoveries, he has spent over 2 decades traveling around the USA and internationally, sharing his calming harp ministry and teaching about the beneficial qualities of this music. Over the years, Steve has recorded 14 CDs that are available on his website, Calming Harp. He also established a YouTube channel and has thousands of followers who write frequent comments about how the music has changed their lives. He publishes a weekly podcast titled Calming Harp, and he's also the author of a monthly contributing article for Masters of Health magazine. Everyone please give a round of applause for Steve Rees.
Thank you all. And thank you, Richard, for giving me this opportunity. I'm used to being in places that have a lot fewer people, so this is kind of fun, so thank you. And I am, as I mentioned earlier in the question and answer, I'm very encouraged to see this many people interested in understanding further what we're all going to be talking about through this weekend. The one thing I want to also say is that you're going to hear different, as you already did, we come from different backgrounds, different paradigms, different lenses that we use to see the world around us. And so I'm going to present my lens to you, and you may not all click with it in all respects, but I want to present it to you because I think it helps to describe my journey, at least. As was stated, I started out as a registered nurse doing hemodialysis, and when you have a 3-hour treatment and things are pretty slow and everything's working well, I read a lot of books, and but I made a harp. I always loved Celtic music, and I decided for my 45th birthday I would make a harp and see if I could play one. And so this is, I think I've got there we go. This is a harp that's actually was built in the 1500s. It's in a museum in Ireland, and it's actually still playable. It's been restored. But the first one I made was just about this size, and I started plunking around with it, and it wasn't long before I got brave enough to let somebody hear me play it. And that's when I started taking it in. So I would have it sitting there, and if it was slow, I'd go to a patient. Well, is it okay if I do a little practicing? But the thing that started amazing me, Ireland has one of their flags has a harp on it, and the harp goes way back. One of the answers to the questions about the different cultures is that almost every culture around the world has some form of a harp as well. It's a very old instrument, very ancient, and then King David as well. We'll talk about him in a minute. So I started looking at the monitor, and I was noticing things about my patients that was not usual. Their blood pressures would come down, heart rates would come down, oxygen saturations would come up, and pain medicine that wasn't working started working. And patients that never slept were sleeping. And I started saying, there's got to be something going on here that I need to understand. And so I was reading one time in 1 Samuel 16, and it says that this King Saul had a troubling spirit that would come on him, and they decided that they would go and get David to come and play. And when he came, it says, came to pass when the evil spirit from God was upon Saul, that David took the harp and played with his hand, and Saul was refreshed, and the evil spirit departed from him. Now what that evil spirit was, I don't know, whether it was nausea or whatever, but something was going on, and David started playing the harp and it left. And I'm thinking, that's got to be similar to what I'm seeing. And so, since David, as many people know, if I was to say, what's your favorite psalm, most people say at least Psalm 23, right? Most people have at least heard that once or twice. And I thought, Psalms are a song, really. I mean, the whole book of Psalms is actually a song book. It's an ancient song book. And actually, David didn't write all of them. It's a compilation of several authors. But I thought, does anybody know what David's Psalms would have sounded like? Now, the Hebrew language, David would have written in Hebrew because he was in Israel. And he goes back about, close to 3,000, about 2,500 years, almost between 2,500 and 300 years. I don't have the exact date here in my mind, but a long ways. But he would have been writing in Hebrew, and the Hebrew language is really interesting. Each character has a pictographic origin. And I'll give you an example. The letter I was originally the picture of an eye, and it has the concept to see or to understand. And the interesting thing about Hebrew is that even if I didn't know what the word meant, I could look at each letter in the word, and the understanding of the letters would help me know what the word means. Now that doesn't happen with English. I can say, man, that's really bad. And being 67 years old, I mean, it's bad. But if there's a teenager out here, that's really good. Because it's totally changed 180 degrees, right? But the Hebrew language doesn't do that. It keeps its meaning because it's pictographic. The other thing about it is also has gematria, which is the numerical, a number value for each letter. And so I was very interested in this study that I saw that took Chladni plates, I may not be saying that right, but they took a plate of metal plate and put sand on it, and they would put a bow across it that would vibrate it, and the vibration would make different patterns according to the pattern. We now call it cymatics, and there's incredible stuff going on right now about cymatics. I just finished an online course from John Stewart Reed, who has developed a cymoscope with water, so not only do you get a two-dimensional pattern, but he's also now getting three-dimensional photograph patterns of incredible. So we're actually beginning to see sound. We always think about hearing sound, but now we're beginning to see sound. So what they found was that speaking Hebrew letters into some of these letters, not all of them, but they would actually form, as you can see, I think up here, the sand part looks very close to if you were to draw it on paper. Now this is the Babylonian script, which is not the original Paleo script, but the idea that came to me and I started working on was, if the sound produces a form, is there a way that we can look at the form and hear a sound? Can those two things, are those reversible, interchangeable? That's what I started working with. So the next thing I did, in 2006, I had the opportunity with my wife to go over to Israel for a Feast of Tabernacles. And that's an exciting rockin' party scene if you ever saw one. The streets, you can barely walk through them when that's going on. But while we were there, I thought I would ask archaeologists, rabbis, whoever, does anybody know what David's music sounded like? It was a songbook, right? Well, first of all, has they found any sheet music in a dig or something? Obviously not. So, but the best answer I got, most of the answers were no, we really don't. But Mika Harari builds this little harp This is a 22-string harp, and at the base of each of these strings, he carved in a Hebrew letter. There's 22 letters in the Hebrew alphabet. And so he took each letter and carved it into the base of the string. And his idea was that somebody who was not musical at all could sit down with a song, and they could just go letter to letter and play the song by playing the note to the letter. And I thought, wow, that's kind of cool. How did you decide which note goes to which string, which letter? And he said, well, I just started at the bottom and went to the top. And I was like, well, yeah, but it's still kind of a cool idea. So I went home with that idea, and so what happened was I decided if that was true, that there was a relationship, you could take the middle of the Hebrew alphabet and bring it to the middle of the musical scale, and then go up and down from there and develop a connection between the letters and the notes. And so this is Psalm 23. I'll go ahead and advance it one more so you can. I want you to read the words while I play the music, and we'll put those two together, and then I'll kind of see what your reaction is. Okay, I have to shift things here because I was going to play another song, but I forgot. Anyway, I'll play it later. Anyway, people tell me all the time, you talk too much and you play too little. So anyway, we'll try to strike a balance here. Experience than just reading it out of a book. One guy on my YouTube channel said, it was like the words were flying past me. So I get a lot of different comments. The interesting thing about this was that I ran across, I ran across a book by Leonard Horowitz and Joseph Puleo called Healing Codes for the Biological Apocalypse. Big name for a big book. But in that book, Joseph Puleo said that he had gotten a download from God, the Holy Spirit, And he said that it took him to Numbers chapter 7, and I'll go through that in a little bit, but I wanted to play another one for you, Psalm 121. And the reason why I wanted to play this is because in looking at what Joseph Coolio had written, it brought a whole nother method that was a little more precise than the first one that I explained to you about going the middle to the middle. And so a lot of people ask me, I said, well, you get these chord progressions. As you notice that each letter has a note over each one of them. So there's a note above the letter. And this is, I just translated right out of the song. Actually, in Hebrew, you read this way, so the word goes this way, but the music goes that way, so don't get too confused. But what I found was that, and this is something that I think was a revelation to me personally, was that instead of trying to play each note like a music line, I was to look at all of the notes in one word. So you see this first word here is shir, shin, yod, resh. And that means to sing or a song. And so instead of just playing that like a melody line, put those notes all together. So when you play more than one note together, you know what that is? Okay, chord. A lot of musicians out here, so what we have really is chord progression. Chord to chord to chord to chord to chord. So I started writing the chords above. And I started playing the chord progressions, and that started to make musical sense. I started hearing musical phrasing. So Psalm 121 is a really interesting one. I'm going to play it for you, and I want you to just think about the fact that Psalm 121 is a psalm of ascent. It was sung by the pilgrims as they would come up to Jerusalem 3 times a year for the feasts. And it was also sung by the priests every morning. There were 15 steps at the temple between the court of the men and the brazen altar where the sacrifices were. So every morning they would stand on a step and sing the first psalm of ascent, second psalm of ascent, third, like that, and they would go through all 15 of them every morning. So these are the psalms, and it's called Shir HaMa'alot, which means the song of coming up. And so if you just think of this coming up, and then the interesting thing is, when we go to the text of the psalm, it says, that I lift my eyes to the mountains. So we're talking, so there's this coming up, and there's this lifting, and there's all this coming up. Okay, so just listen to the chord progressions as we go through that song. I still tell people, at some point in my